Good afternoon and welcome to the USA National Alumni Association Courageous Conversation, Nurturing an Inclusive and Diverse Community. I am your moderator, Dr. Joelle Lewis Billingsley, an associate professor in the College of Education and Professional Studies in the program of Instructional Design and Development. As a current faculty member and an alum, it is an honor to have this conversation today with our SGA president and distinct alum who have come together to share really different perspectives on how we can be more inclusive and more diverse at our USA community. So we're so grateful for your participation and attendance here with us today. I'd like to go over the purpose just briefly. The purpose of this conversation is to engage our USA SGA president along with our alum leaders to discuss how USA can continue to foster and enhance a community for students, faculty, and staff that's inclusive and supportive of all members and celebrating diversity. And so that's really our purpose for what we are doing today. And we're just excited to be able to join together. I want to thank all of our committees who are just instrumental in planning this virtual event, our Courageous Conversation Committee, as well as the Alumni Committee. So thank you so much for all you're doing to bring us together during this time. And so we wanted to provide some context for everyone as we are really thinking about, talking about diversity and inclusion. And we want to thank Dr. Paul Frazier, our Chief Diversity Officer, in providing some of the highlights and the current things that are happening with our university now. There's currently a climate survey that our faculty, staff, and students can take. So if you haven't taken that already, if you're on the part of this call, we'd love for you to be able to take that. It's a way for us to gather that information. Also, we have online diversity and inclusion training available. There's a new scholarship, social justice in conjunction and in partnership with the 100 Black Men of Greater Mobile Incorporated. And we're excited about that scholarship. Also, there's social justice training for faculty and students in the Honors College. And continuing to think about social justice in the College of Medicine. There's an initiative that's currently occurring. The athletic department and the faculty senate have developed a diversity and inclusion task force. There are new hiring strategies that have been approved and are now in the faculty handbook. And then also a staff senate that's being developed. And so we're excited about all the things that are happening. And so our panel today is really going to talk about some of their experiences and how we can move forward. So we're actually excited to be able to provide this context for our conversation. And now we're going to get to just hear just a short bio from each of our panelists. They're going to just give you an introduction of who they are. And then once we finish that introduction, we're going to continue into our conversation. We want to start with our SGA president, Tia Nickens. And so we're excited to have you, Tia.
Yeah, thank you. So like she said, my name is Tia Nickens. I have the honor and privilege to be the SGA president this year in this crazy, crazy time of everything going on. And so I'm actually not from Alabama at all. I'm from Illinois, a little small town, Rancho, Illinois, near Champaign. I really am excited about this panel. I'm so excited to be a part of something bigger than myself. And a little bit about me, you know, I love music. I love to dance. Always playing music in the office. So if you ever stop by, you definitely hear some jams going on. And my major is secondary education. And I can't wait to hopefully be a principal and help inspiring kids. So thank you.
Hello, everyone. Let's make sure that I'm showing up. Can everyone hear? Good. Okay. So my name is Julian Mcqueen. I wrote a bio here. I'm actually going to read because it kind of pertains specifically to this topic that we're working on. And I think it gives a great context of what was going on 50 years ago. Can't believe I'm saying 50 years. But I was born in an upper class town in Alabama called Mountain Brook. It was a suburb of Birmingham. And at the time, Mountain Brook took a great pride in the fact that we were wealthy enough that we did not have to use any federal funds for our school system. And therefore, we didn't have to comply to any of the segregation rules that were enacted in the early 60s. The first person of any color I spoke to that wasn't working for the family was at South Alabama. This culture shock for me was huge because I'd never spoken to a Black person on an equal level. The system that I grew up in was not broken because we as white people were superior, and so there was no problem. We just kept it that way, and it was not until I came to South Alabama that I realized that I was living in a broken system. So the time in the 60s really was a time of huge change. All the social mores were being questioned, and for the first time, even the idea of women's rights was being questioned, and racial equality was being questioned. And this was well before anything came up with gay rights. And yes, I was a hippie. So at that time, I took my journey through the world of academia and being a good student. I started questioning everything like a good student should. And so I looked at the equality of religion and discovered the Baha'i faith. And that really was one of those pivotal moments in my life where this course is being taught at an experimental college at the time. It was the teacher was another student. And this is the first time that I really started thinking about the equality of race and gender and even religion. So as a psychology major, I took the principles that I learned there and started establishing a foundation for a new culture for the company that I started, the hotel company, Innisfree Hotels, back in 1985. And we've taken all those principles of equality and gender, equality, all the isms, and taken a real firm step hiring a diversity head back 25 years ago, where we knew that this was the kind of company that we wanted. So that's what we've done. We now have a big company with lots of people, and we look at diversity as one of those key elements that we have to have in Innisfree Hotels in order to be a leader and to beat our competition. So that's kind of my background.
Okay, we're going to hear next from Margie.
Good afternoon. I am Margie Malone Tuxen, and I am very proud and very honored to be part of the program this afternoon. I couldn't be any more different than the conversation that Julian just gave. I grew up in Mobile, Alabama, downtown Mobile. I attended segregated schools in Mobile. We had one public library that was available to pretty much all of Mobile. So education, in terms of its limitations, was very, very difficult. But my family made a decision very early on in the early 60s, and they made a decision to transform that form of education into something better. So in 1960, my sister applied to the University of Alabama, downtown Mobile. As a result of her decision to apply to this particular university, of course, the university closed down. As a result of that closure, we now have the University of South Alabama. Dr. Fred Witten, our very first president, was the director of that program downtown. He, along with business people in the Mobile community, as well as state legislators, went about the business of going to Montgomery to get a charter to create a new university. A decision like that on behalf of my family was very, very, very trying, very difficult, very threatening. And we all stuck together. We had, we made a decision that we were going to support her. She went on to challenge then George Wallace at the University of Alabama and made a decision, and she stuck through it, graduated, and was the first graduate of the University of Alabama as an African American. We're very proud of her. They've been sort of my stalwart. Now, the pieces that I described to you a few minutes ago became clear to me as a result of my being a part of the University of South Alabama. What happened was, in a meeting, someone just dropped a brown envelope to me. And that envelope had all of the information, the missing pieces, the information that I needed to put my story together and my family's story together. But the unfortunate part about that is she did not live long enough to me to share what I've just shared with you. So I'm very proud to be a part of this university and to share my story. But out of one closure, we have what we have at this university today. And I intend to continue to do the work that continues to increase the number of minority students that can have this opportunity to be educated.
Thank you so much, Margie. And now we will hear from Laurie.
Good afternoon. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you to the organizers for putting this together and for the panelists to share these incredibly heartfelt and amazing stories of where we have come from. I think all of us have rich tapestries in our lives. I'm a native Mobilian. I grew up in Mobile in a time of segregation, attended Murphy High School when Murphy was being segregated. And went through some tough times, lots of learning, lots of exposure. And really at that point began my own journey of looking at what we can do to improve equity. And for me, equity has been about health largely, because that's where my background is. A little bit about me. I have a PhD in cancer immunology after receiving my bachelor's degree in medical technology in 1980 from USA. I worked 2 years at the USA Medical Center and in the clinical labs after completing my degree, going on to the University of Oklahoma with receiving a PhD there, going to MD Anderson to serve as a postdoc and staying on as a faculty member there for 14 years. At MD Anderson, I began a journey of really looking at the underrepresented students that we were seeing that were very few in number in PhD programs, and began very actively helping our university to recruit and retain additional students, underrepresented minorities of all types, that would come through as clinical fellows and as graduate students. I trained a number of these in my own laboratory, moving in 2000 to the University of California to take a position as a professor and be a part of the leadership team to establish a new medical school in California. It was the first new medical school in California in 40 years. And what drew me to that opportunity was really the fact that this medical school was being stood up to train physicians in a culturally competent way to serve the needs of the individuals in those areas. As a new way to really set a medical school up and train individuals. Research programs and clinical research programs also were tailored to the unique needs of that region. It was a very exciting time for me to be a part of that. That medical school came to fruition, was approved by the state legislature. I took a brief time out to go start a company in San Diego and then returned to do the program implementation for that medical school. At that point in 2008, I was actually recruited to return to Mobile, and it was my delight to serve as the Associate Director for the Mitchell Cancer Institute in Mobile. And there we tried very hard to make an impact, as all of USA Health does, on the health disparities that we see in that area. So that was near and dear to my heart as well. I was recruited back again to California in 2017 to be Assistant Vice Chancellor for Research at University of California, San Diego. I retired there this year in 2020 and now reside in the Bay Area, where I am an active consultant.
Thank you so much. And as we continue to hear from our distinguished panel, Ken?
Hi, everyone. I am absolutely delighted to be part of this panel, and it really is a rich tapestry of experiences that I've heard, and really very inspiring too. And one thing that stands out to me is my own experience just has intersected with the experiences that you've already heard. Like Margie, I grew up in segregated Mobile, the Mobile of the 1950s and 60s, and really even into the 1970s. And my family was in the Roger Williams Project. In fact, I lived in the Roger Williams Projects for the first 9 years or so of my life, and looked at the world from the perspective of coming from the outside and looking in. And one of the things that I distinctly remember looking at as the country and the community was trying to emerge from the segregated era that we lived in, those Jim Crow times, was the experience that Margie described of her sister Vivian Malone having the courage to go to the University of Alabama and facing all the opposition that she did, really in an extremely courageous and historic way. So that was inspiring. And one of the key experiences, though, was the experience of my mother, who, after having 7 kids and living in the projects, always wanted to be a school teacher, and was able to realize that because of South Alabama and the efforts of Dr. Whidden and others to make that happen. So for me and my 6 siblings, all of us ended up going to South Alabama, and all of us, with one exception, who went to Auburn, who graduated from Auburn, got our degrees from Auburn. And I found myself after South going to law school, and being in law school at the University of Alabama, right next door to Coleman Coliseum, where Margie's sister had so courageously gone through that door. And I went to law school because I really wanted to make a difference in my community and to make a difference wherever I was. And South opened the door for me. So that South experience was really important for me. I now live in Birmingham, in a neighborhood right next door to, ironically, Julian, right next door to Mountain Brook. And I'm able to see the world from a completely different perspective now. I think a broader perspective that has enabled me to realize a lot of the dreams that were born in Mobile for me, even from the outside looking in.
Thank you so much. As you can see, our panel, we have a very distinct panel, and we're looking forward to this conversation. We're going to continue on so we can hear more from them. Just to let everyone know, we are recording today's conversation for archiving and so that others can see this, but we will have Q&A available, and also there'll be some Google form links that you'll be able to participate in if you're in our audience. And so we just wanted to make sure you kind of have a framework of how we're going to move forward. And also thinking about our values. So we just want to really try to see if we can listen actively as our panels give their perspectives of our university. And speaking from our own experiences, if you're in the Q&A and you want to sort of give some perspective and ask a question, speak from your own experiences. Also, asking questions respectfully. We'll have some time at the end of this conversation to answer some questions from the audience, and so we'd love for you to be able to post those, and then just be open to hearing different perspectives as we're moving forward. Thank you so much. Now, we want to make sure that you know there's going to be a link that is going to be in the chat that will allow for you to be able to give some feedback about what's important to you as alumni. So there's a link that's in your chat, and so we'd love for you to chime in and hear some important issues that you find that the university needs to bring into awareness and some attention to. And so we're going to move into that. That's going to be part of what we'll do in our first round of questions for our panel. And let's go ahead and get started. We're going to get started with our SGA president, and Tia. We're going to talk a little bit about why is inclusion and diversity important to this undergraduate experience that you're in the midst of now, and what should South be doing to promote a more inclusive and diverse environment for students where they can thrive and continue to learn?
Yeah, thank you. So the first question, it's kind of a tough one. It's a very big question to answer. Like, why is it important? Why do students think they need to go through it in 4 years of their life? And well, to me, college is really the first time that a lot of students are exposed to different cultures and different people in general. And that can be really hard for some people, and that can be easier for others. And that being said, you know, it's very important to teach students what to do with this new change and how to embrace the change of different cultures and different races and ethnicities, because if you aren't provided with information or the education or the tools to be able to assess that, it can be really hard for you during your undergraduate experience and, well, the rest of your life, because there's not many people that are like you in the world. That's very for sure. But to me personally and my fellow students, and I really think I can speak for them on this, saying that everyone's life is different and everyone has their own experiences, and it's very, very important that we learn to embrace those and to challenge others and ask them questions. And by doing this, we can make sure that diversity and inclusion is in every aspect and every experience and in every conversation that people have at this university. And we as humans should really all be fostering environments that we can learn from and just educate our own selves with. And so to me, it's so, so, so important to include diversity and inclusion on any campus and any life experience, and it'll just make you an overall better candidate in every position that you choose to go for. And for the second question, South really should be working to foster environments for students like this. And, you know, they're doing a very good job. This year is a very crazy year, as we've all saw, but just seeing the measures and the steps that they're putting into work now, it's just incredible to be in the middle of a pandemic and seeing the importance of diversity and inclusion efforts on our campus, with hiring of Dr. Frazier a couple of years ago and seeing his work, and SGA's partnered with him a few times. I know you guys got to see a little bit of what we're doing, and I'll speak a little bit more on that later, because we personally got to have a hand in creating the training and building the modules and the aspects that go into each training, which is super important to know that students were able to have that perspective. And so for the university to be able to provide those opportunities for students now is something that is going to be very effective in years to come. And for students to be able to say, like, I've had diversity and inclusion training before I graduated, and that's something that a lot of people can't say, right? And so a lot of schools now, especially in the Big Ten Conference, are moving to make those requirements a thing And for us to be on the forefront of that is amazing. And to be able to say that we are trying on our campus to increase the diversity and inclusion efforts so that students feel comfortable and they feel safe on their campus is just amazing, truly. So for South to be already be doing that, we're ahead of the game, we're working, and we are so excited to continue to let students feel comfortable and safe on our campus. Thank you.
Yeah, we thank you just for your contribution in helping make that environment come to reality at South Alabama. So thank you for all of your efforts, everyone and your team, SGA. We just appreciate all of your efforts. And as we continue this conversation, Jillian, you mentioned some of the things that are part of your culture in terms of business. We'd love to hear, how can South create a culture of diversity and inclusion as a part of the foundation of the things that we do at our institution? And what role can South play in educating students about how to be prepared for today's workforce?
That's a easy question. No, seriously, it's a amazing question, and I've thought a little bit about it over the last few days. But what I reflected back on was when I came into the University of South Alabama as a 17-year-old from this lily white background in Mountain Brook, fourth generation, having kind of the world set up in a view that that really in my world wasn't broken. This was a perfect world. Us white folks were privileged. We had all the rights and that we ever wanted, and it never was questioned. In my house, it wasn't necessarily a racist house. It was just the way it was. It just wasn't questioned. So I thought about, what it must be like. Here we are 50 years later, and coming into the South Alabama as a student, looking for all those answers and being curious about what the world is going to hold for you in the future. And we have a saying at industry hotels that sometimes we have to force happiness upon you. And this is kind of the role I see South Alabama has in the sense that, we in South Alabama, I believe, really needs to make a very strong effort to have some kind of compulsory education in diversity. When we onboard people at Innisfree hotels, we require them to go through a diversity training. This is one of the first things. And the part about that that's fascinating is that, we know that if anyone feels marginalized, they're going to come into the room in any meeting and give only that part of themselves that they feel safe giving. If the environment is restrictive, they will give you just a little bit of who they are and a little bit of the ideas that they may be having on any subject. But if we embrace them and if we understand that they are equal and that ideas are not exclusive to the title that goes behind your name, ideas are available to anyone and everyone. And typically in the hotel business, those people that have the best ideas are those ones that are in contact, with the customer every day. And so I can tell you, with our diversity training and our what we call it Genesis, is because it's the beginning of everything. If we embrace this attitude, then we can bring everybody to the table 100% of the time. And therefore what happens is that, the customer has an authentic experience when they come to our hotels, and our employees feel valued. And that's the kind of thing that I think that South Alabama needs to put into place. And the thing is, and this is I think very important, it cannot be academic. It really has to be experiential. In order for there to be change, it has to happen at the personal level. The institution can establish the organization to make it happen, but it's going to be important for these courses that hopefully will be mandated to dig down to the level that it's not a presentation. It's actually something that has an earnest and authentic expression of what's going on between two people, not through the institution to the people that are experiencing this orientation. That I think is paramount.
Thank you so much. You've given us so much to think about as we're talking about being the foundation and the genesis of the work that we're doing, and including all, and being able to be equipped to do that. Thank you so much for that perspective. And as we move to talking a little bit about health, Margie, would you talk to us about how do we be equipped and really be able to, as an institution, make an impact in health disparities, and also thinking about how do we consider the community as we're moving in that area?
Thank you, Dr. Billingsley. The issue of healthcare disparities in the minority communities is a mammoth issue. First of all, we have to begin that platform with the uninsured, the underinsured. We have to deal with the fact of employment, unemployment, choices that people will make but should make, and beginning to grapple with how do we begin to address the overall issues of health in our community. Mobile is not any different than almost any other city in America. The one issue that Mobile, Alabama, and across the country is the issue of obesity. We really have to think about the issue of obesity. So we have obesity on one hand, and then we have food deserts on the other. So in the issue of obesity, which then trickles into chronic health diseases, it trickles into kidney failure, it goes into any number of other issues because poor diets creates poor health. And my husband and I have a company called Tuxen Health Connections. We started this company 6 years ago after he retired from United Healthcare. And the purpose of this company was to take a look at all those issues that we personally were concerned about and go about the business of trying to make changes in the community of health. Our model is a little different than a lot of people because what we do, we support, we fund, we create opportunities for those people who are out there doing the work that we personally are not able to do. So when you look at what South can or cannot do or is doing in the area of health disparities, first of all, we just have to make sure we're clear on what those issues are. And when we look at, again, let's start with obesity in America, which is a problem. We look at the fact that people may or may not have health insurance, therefore they're not going to come to the USA Health. And if they come, they're going to come at a state of where they are so sick that their care and the quality of care and their price of care gets to be enormous. And that is a part of the problem when we look at what are we doing to help our community. As far as trying to come up with a solution for this, it's the only thing, when I saw this question, the only thing I would say, retraining people is very difficult, adults in this area of healthy choices. My suggestion personally would be we need to go after a much younger group of people to create healthy habits. We have to go at the elementary school level, the preschool level, letting young people, let's develop a healthy mind in a much younger group of young people. And hopefully this will transition when they go to the grocery store with their parents. They begin to look at healthy choices. It's not going to be the best thing. They will want things that they probably shouldn't have, but they will begin to, we need to create a new core of people that understand how to choose and how to make life healthier, beside exercising and doing a lot of other things. But I think we should start with a younger group of people, whether that is a cooperative effort with the Mobile Public School System, the county school systems, communities, but we can't go in with a flat out answer. We don't have the right to do that. We have a right to listen. We have a right to understand what the communities feel like their needs. In looking at other communities around the world, what we're beginning to see is they are creating community health gardens. They're doing things where the young people and people in a vacant lot, they're beginning to grow their own. They're beginning to create those things. And if you put it in the ground and you see that it grows, you will probably participate in eating it. And so we might want to consider in the community where we can put healthy vegetable gardens, where those things may or may not be available to communities. And as you very well know, Mobile has a lot of food deserts. And their choices of foods are going to be prepackaged, they're going to be frozen, they're going to be things with a lot of sodium, salt, sugar, and things that are truly unhealthy, which overall creates the area of obesity. So I would say young people, children, and of course involving the community at all levels of the school systems, public health, and everything, not to create an answer that we then shove down someone's throat. That would be my suggestion.
Thank you so much. You've given us a real charge for empowering the younger generation to continue to think about and to be a part of that solution. And so this is a wonderful transition as we really start to think about, Laurie, I have a question that relates to South being a steward of public trust as a public institution, and how should South Alabama address these community-based problems through outreach and other ways? We'd love to hear your perspective of how South can do that.
Sure. Well, let's just start with the big picture, and that is that, South is a public institution, and public institutions of higher education were set up for the public good. So the charge has always been for the public good. Equally important to the time that we live in, I think that institutes of higher education play a very key role in the dissemination of impartial, fact-based information. So the public can rely on us to get information that they can trust and rely on across the board. I think that's very fundamental and important to all of these discussions, that we are an impartial place that people can go for facts. Public universities are very uniquely positioned, and I think they're very uniquely positioned to use their networks, and they have incredible networks of influence and visibility. And through those networks, they can speak out against racism and bias and intolerance, while highlighting ongoing activities that we have on our campuses that really demonstrate their willingness to lean in to these very difficult conversations, to tackle systemic disparities and work towards social justice. South has many ongoing activities, as was mentioned earlier in this conversation. They should be continuously showcased to the public. The community should be aware of these activities, the university's position on key issues, and have full view of the broad scope of activities that go on for both projects and programs aimed at eliminating racial disparities, health disparities, environmental disparities, as well as economic disparities to achieve social justice. South has a wealth of opportunity because we have a business school, we have a nursing school, we have a medical school, we have a health system. Through these components, we can leverage an immense amount of wealth. And by wealth, I mean knowledge, know-how, and connections to deliver these things and combat directly health disparities in our community, going on the road towards social justice. While outreach is certainly a component of these activities, reflecting back on what Margie spoke about earlier, social justice is really only possible through community-based partnerships, real partnerships based on trust and common goals. And along those lines, I think that, one of the things that I have seen in other places that is done is really at this point in this tumultuous time that we find ourselves, is really for the universities to take a very proactive stance and craft public statements, public affirmations of what their beliefs are, and very, very strongly come out and say things like, we acknowledge that society has carried historical and divisive biases based on race, ethnicity, sex, gender identity, age, disability, sexual orientation, religion, and political beliefs, and we will confront and respond to such acts. And talk about what the university can do in terms of setting guidelines, basically having rules of engagement, so that you can have these very difficult conversations and make progress and be respectful and bring everyone into the conversations. So lean into these conversations, take a lead in the community, and show that we are leaders on social justice.
Thank you so much. You've challenged us to continue to think about how we can leverage the know-how and the systems and all of the established infrastructure that we have as a university to be able to engage the community. And Ken, this is a great segue and really a good way for us to talk about how do we leverage those partnerships? You know, what ways can South Alabama strategically approach community engagement, where we're considering the history of Mobile, the context, and many of the things that our panelists have talked about in being in this particular community. How can South Alabama strategically approach that engagement, considering those things?
Well, I think you know as well as anyone, Dr. Billingsley, about the history and where the disparities are. So you're the expert here, but I'm not shy about throwing in my 2 cents. Like Lori, I do think that we need to look at the big picture. And one of the things that seems to me to be true about South is that it doesn't really realize how much power it actually does have. I think the university in some ways underestimates its own ability. Like Lori says, there's a wealth of talent, a wealth of skills, capacity, experiences. There's a unique status in being what we are, which is a comprehensive research institution that itself is part of the region's history. The people that make up the university, that make up the students, for the most part, they're not like Tia. They don't come from a big state like Illinois. We come from 8 Mile and Atmore and Tobinville and down the bay and Mountain Brook. So the university itself has all these people for whom, or of whom, you know, the experiences of the 60s and the Jim Crow era and its consequences, these are real experiences, and there's a certain perspective that has been gained from this experience or these experiences. And the sooner that we understand how it is that our business school and our health system and the other parts of the university can make a difference in Africatown, Dr. Billingsley, can make a difference in rural Alabama, where obviously there are just so many different problems with rural poverty that I think we need to focus our attention on. These experiences and the history that created these social disparities, economic disparities, really can be addressed with, I think, more focus. So how can South play a role? The partnerships that have been mentioned. When we look at the needs from the standpoint of, let's just say, the small business community. Well, yeah, we do have a business school with a lot of experience, a lot of talented people. Wouldn't it be great if we could see more engagement by our business school into the areas that have been abandoned, really, in a lot of ways. When we look at the food deserts that certainly do exist, well, you know, there are many federal grants out there that might be available to help remedy some of the deserts that we experience, to help remedy some of the health disparities. We've got a lot of experience as a research institution in grant writing, in grant administration, and in having the vision that it takes to try to pull all of these things together. When we look at the educational disparities that exist, let's say in the public schools where virtually all of us attended, when we look at the need that's there, you know, we are playing a huge role as it is now by producing teachers, but we can do more. We can do more, perhaps, to help our inner city schools, our rural schools, create the kind of opportunities that we know that are necessary for students to achieve. Despite all that, when we look at what South has done over the years, over the 50+ years, I think that we also deserve to stand back and realize that our institution has made a difference. But as we look towards the future, we can do even more to realize who we are. And yeah, we are South.
Thank you so much. We've heard so much from our panel. Tia talked to us about the importance of continuing this conversation. Julian really emphasized culture and ways that we can make that a part of our foundation. Margie really said we got to identify these particular opportunities. And Lori really said, you know, we can have some collective affirmation about how we can make a stand in our community and let people know where we are as an institution. And Ken, you've really wrapped up for us. How can we continue to leverage the power and that we do have in these partnerships and really capitalize on the wealth as our institution is a part of this larger community. Thank you all so much for these insights and your perspectives on these particular areas. We're going to engage on with some questions from our audience, but one thing we'd like to do, we're going to have a link in the chat that will be available for all participants, and this is going to be about your vision for the future of USA. We'd love for you to be able to get to that link and go ahead and provide some thoughts for us in terms of what are your visions from our alumni. And so I'd like to continue to engage the panel, and we're going to move into just some questions, and if our panel can give some brief responses, that will be great. How can public universities that depend on federal and state funds position regarding systemic racism given the president's recent executive order? So are there some things we need to think about? Anyone on the panel who'd like to respond, are there some things we need to think about as we really think about as being a public university?
I can certainly try to address that. I think that there are always workarounds. It is politics after all. There are always workarounds, even to executive orders. And if you simply look at the approaches that states like California and others have taken, I believe that there are always workarounds that you can still state your beliefs and do things behind the scenes and still be compliant with anything that may impact federal funding.
Thank you so much. Other thoughts here? I do want to sort of move into a question around addressing federal child nutrition programs within school systems in terms of thinking about how we are developing those dietary habits and health issues. Margie, would you like to give any perspective around thinking about the federal child nutrition program? We'll make sure you're unmuted. We'll make sure.
All right, there we go. I read the two-part question, which had to do with fast foods and prepared foods are much more inexpensive than a healthy diet. I think that was the second part to the question. So if you're giving a young child cereal coated with sugar and unhealthy things that go along with that, of course, this is where I was describing, we have to start early in our nutrition and diet with our children. In terms of that particular program, there were, as we go from administration to administration, those rules change. We had a program previously that talked about healthy food in the nutrition program in public education. And from administration to administration, those rules get tossed out and a new set of rules because the prepackaged foods generally are cheaper on an education or nutrition program than real food. And that is a federal mandate that is very hard to deal with when you have someone, maybe the FDA or HHS, making those rules. We are then the recipient of whatever happens out of that. So I'm not only, okay, so we're dealing with that federal component to this. Here's the other part to this. If you are making, which the minimum wage in Alabama is $7.25 an hour. If you're making $7.25 an hour and you really only bring home, let's say your gross pay is $1,000, $1,100, not taking out taxes or anything on that scale, you're gonna stop by and get the cheapest food you can find to feed your family. If that's 5 burgers for $5, that's what you're gonna get. If it's whatever that is on your way home, if you're working 1 job, 2 jobs, or whatever, you're going to find a way to feed your children or your family the cheapest and the most inexpensive way that's possible. So this issue, as in terms of nutrition at an early age, is important because nutrition also feeds the brain. So it does us no good, but I will say from administration to administration, these rules change in terms of the quality of food that is in our school systems, in our federal programs, and so forth. And we need a long-term strategy for health in America, because this unhealthy America just creates more and more burden of healthcare debt. And it's something that everybody needs to have a say-so in talking to your elected officials about how this works.
Thank you so much for answering our question from the audience. Now we're just going to have just a quick rapid fire from our panel, just about in a minute or less. We'd love to hear what your vision is for South Alabama. What is your vision? And, you know, we actually are going to start with Ken, and we'd love to hear what's your vision. And we're doing a rapid fire for sake of time, but come on and we'd love to hear it.
Okay, well, my vision is, in addition to what we've already talked about, I want to see South truly become more diverse. I see us maybe going backwards in this sense. Although the number of minority students has increased over the years, I see less representation of minority students from the Mobile school community. To me, I think we must do better to attract students from the local community, and I think this will pay benefits for the university in many, many ways.
Thank you, Ken. Laurie, we'd love to hear your vision for South Alabama.
I think I'm unmuted. I think that my vision for South Alabama is really that we create a model for diversity, equity, and inclusion that is nationally renowned, that we really embrace this topic area and really invest in it. The model that I think we can have is really going to be one that will start locally and and grow. Because as we create these environments on campus where we train our faculty, staff, and students, these students graduate, they go out into the community, and the model, the classic model that's called what is learned here, leaves here, that really goes out into the community, and we become a big influencer around these topics, which I think we have ignored. In some ways, universities have ignored the vast amount of influence that they can have based on changes that they make in their own internal cultures. So that's one vision. I think that the other vision that I would have is that really the faculty, the staff, and the student body is really reflective of the diversity that we see in the regions that we serve. And I think finally, then, I think that I would like to see that we look forward and we see that our underrepresented students are being successful, are being retained, and are entering the job force at pay scales and job equivalencies to those of the majority students, and that they can continue this mentorship out in the community to do outreach to younger students, as we heard other panelists mention, that we need that reach in, that will generate additional interest in our university and foster diversity going forward.
Thank you, Lori. Margie?
My vision for the university is one of which we begin to tell a better story of who we are. And we don't let anybody else tell our story. We tell our story from a position of strength, a position of honesty, and a position of we want to include all people within the boundaries of this beautiful campus. It shouldn't be we're over here and someone is over there. It should be an all-inclusive type of approach to the university. On the second point, I would want to say, I would like to see the university do everything they can to increase the minority graduation rates. I think that we need to make sure that the students coming into the university through the public education system, they're prepared, they're ready, they're competitive, and they are able to stand up and do the job that they're supposed to do once they enter the university. The third thing I would say is that in the area of public information, we should be the #1 source of good information that goes out to our community. And that's a very strong issue. If it's history, it should say, whatever this was that happened, South Alabama represents this, and we're putting this story out. It's PSAs that we put out that tell the story of what we're doing in Mobile. And so those would be the things. Graduation rates are just so important. Then finally, what we have to make sure is that these students find jobs in Mobile. We have to make sure these students are in internships, they're in some type of a program, or some type of where the people who are employing, they're looking to make sure these students are successful. Otherwise, we have students who take off and leave the state and go for better jobs. And we call that a brain drain. And we need all the resources we can get in Mobile to keep Mobile on top of its game. So those would be the things that I think the university could do and approach from a community, student-wise, and everything I think that would be helpful.
Thank you, Margie. Julian, we'd love to hear your vision, and then we'll hear from Tia.
Thank you. I'm very pragmatic. The ideas that I've heard are amazing, and I think we need to continue those initiatives and that outreach. I was particularly struck by Ken's point of underestimating the influence that South Alabama has in the community. I think there is a tremendous amount of potential there. And we have this beautiful new alumni center that was just built. And my wife Kim and I have always dreamt that this center would be a center for civil discourse that could discuss these very difficult issues and invite the community into the university to look at these things and invite renowned speakers from around the world that can come in and do that. And we would like, Kim and I would like to donate $50,000 as a payments for honorariums that will go towards these great speakers, and start putting together some kind of program that'll start inviting the community in. Because the dilemma that we have, and this is really something I haven't sorted out, is that, you know, the very people that need this message the most are not on this call today. It's those people we need to reach out to. We have to find some kind of way of reaching out to those folks that allows them to feel comfortable coming in and talking about these difficult issues. So we'd love to make that offer. We'd love to make the McQueen Alumni Center the focal point of these kind of outreach programs, and leverage those things that Ken talks about, where the influence of South Alabama is sitting there with all these resources, and let's push it out to the community, and let's get something going.
Well, thank you, Jillian. And on behalf of all alumni, I'd like to say thank you for just, helping be able to actualize many of these particular things around bringing that voice of new voices and renowned speakers to the university. Thank you so much, and thank you for your perspective. And, we began this conversation with our students, and we are going to really conclude this conversation with our student. Tia, we'd love to hear your vision for South Alabama.
Yeah, throwing it back to what Julian said earlier, I don't think we stop until all have their seat at their table, right? And I think that's really, really big and important right now. And we are rolling out the diversity and inclusion training that Dr. Frazier and SGA helped create, and it highlights microaggressions and cultural appropriation, assimilation, biases, and we're trying to help offer students a space to where they can report biases. And all of this goes to say that we're not there yet by any means, but after this year, I can assure you that we're one step closer to giving everyone a seat at their table. And that's the biggest thing that the vision of South should be, is that we don't stop until everyone and anyone can feel comfortable and can have that option.
And thank you so much, Tia. And to all of our panelists, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedules to really share with your fellow alumni and really just give those perspectives that are so important to our university. Thank you again for your time and your perspectives today. And to everyone, our audience today, we just want to thank you for being present with us today. Thank you for, really engaging virtually. This is a new world for us. And so we're excited on behalf of the planning committee. We want to thank you for attending, and thank you for participating through those forums. I want to let you know that the Alumni Association, everyone is really excited to hear those thoughts. So they will be really acted upon and really have some time to debrief around those important topics. We would like to also let you know that there is an opportunity with the social justice initiatives and in terms of how to either serve on the Social Justice Advisory Council or to be a part of the scholarship initiative. If you have any information or even questions about that, please contact Margaret Sullivan, our VP for Development and Alumni Relations. So again, thank you all for your time today. We are really challenged in this moment to continue the work. And so from alumni to alumni, have a wonderful day. Thank you very much.